Welcome to my channel, Literature Science Alliance, where I take a break from being a grad student and talk to you about some of the things I've been reading. In this video, I wanted to do a December wrap-up because I've always wanted to look at all the things I've read in the past month, and this is kind of the perfect excuse. So this month, I read 7 books, which is a really good month for me, especially with all the holiday travel. Here's a little graphic to the side. I read 2 young adult, 3 fantasy, a historical fiction, and a graphic novel. And the average rating was about 4 stars. So just to get right into it, the first book I read was a reread for me, and it was the second book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah Moss. And I will put the image here because I can never remember the name of the books in these series. I actually learned about this book in 2018 from one of my best friends because she really loves this author and we were exchanging books, so I picked it up and I thought she was a bunch of fun. I did not know she was as famous as she is, but there's a time to learn everything. So I picked it up, and I think the first and third book are really fun, but the second book is my favorite and why I was doing this reread, so I could just be at home for break and just spend a few nights staying up till 3 a.m. reading it, and it did not disappoint. I enjoy following these characters and going through their development and watching this evolving romance. It really resonates with me, and I really can't explain it. Maybe it's a guilty pleasure, but I love it, and I'm sure I will reread it again one day. So yeah, I give it 5 out of 5. It's not the best thing that's ever been written, but for pure entertainment value, that's where it is for me. So yeah, that is the second book of A Court of Thorns and Roses. The next book I read was for my book club. Now, this is called Celestial Bodies, and I'm going to post it here, and I've tried practicing how to pronounce her name, and I really think I just butcher it. But this was a big deal because this is the winner of the International Booker Award, and she is the first female author from Oman to get this award. And this was a translated work. So we read this book. The premise is you have these 3 sisters and a few generations, and we're following the evolution of Oman from the 80s to closer to present day. And I don't know what I expected. You definitely watch the evolution of culture in this book, but you don't get as much time with the characters. It's like a tease. Like, you get just enough of the characters to like think they're interesting, but I wanted more. And the character we got to spend the most time with was a sister's husband's perspective, and he was very self-pitying and by far had the most frustrating chapter. He had the last chapter in the book, and we are unclear of if it's real or a dream sequence, but it was very confusing and an unsatisfying conclusion. I do feel that in its original language, this book is probably much more beautiful. There was gorgeous poetry in this book that when translated was still very nice, but I bet it was gorgeous in the original language. That all said, I don't regret reading it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't like the structure of the narrative, is I think my biggest complaint with it. The writing was very nice, and I enjoyed the topic, but the structure of the narrative was really rough on me. The third book I read this month was Sword of Destiny. This is, if you don't know, the second short story collection for the Witcher series. There are 2 short story collections that are published first, and I have been told you should read first, and I agree. Not that I've read anything else so far, but I've read both of these, The Last Wish in November and Sword of Destiny in December, and they have been one of my biggest surprises of 2019. I don't know what I expected, but I loved The Last Wish so much that I asked for this beautiful little thing for Christmas, and it's so pretty. And I love it because it's printed on. I'm very excited about this book because it's great. And I don't love the mass paperback art personally. So The Sword of Destiny, or Sword of Destiny, is a continuation of these short stories, and I liked it a lot. I liked The Last Wish 5 out of 5 stars. This one was 4.5 out of 5 because I think the pacing is not as good as for Last Wish. Instead of having this good blend of character development with Monster Hunts, you get kind of more character development and character driven stories that are very interesting, but the pacing is just a bit off for me personally. But by the end, I was sold and so excited to get into the next book. Geralt is a protagonist that I have not been so invested in a very long time. And I love the Netflix show, and this whole world is something I didn't know I would love so much, and I'm just so excited that I'm discovering it. It's been a great time. So that was Sword of Destiny. The next one I read, I decided to finish The Court of Thorns of Roses, so I think this one's called The Court of Wings and Ruin. I get all those names confused. There's going to be an image here, so you'll know for sure. I might not. But this one's fine. 4 out of 5 stars. Nice, fun, fast plot. A lot of the elements I really love from the second book are not as present, and I find that Sarah Moss has predictable series endings, which can limit my enjoyment. That's a lot of authors. Like, a lot of my favorite authors have kind of predictable endings, but hers, they're predictable in kind of like a no stakes way, at least for me. I don't know, she pairs everyone off, and I don't know, it's not all happily ever after, but it's a degree or two away. But I still loved it, and it was, fun time, fun battles, lots of magic, romance. Great YA book. And the next one I read was a graphic novel, and I don't read these very often, but actually the two I've read this year were for the same reason. I went to Portland, Maine, we went to a comic book store, and I picked up a graphic novel as a gift for someone. And before I got to give it to them, I was like, oh, well, I have this book, I should read it. And this one was All-Star Superman, and I got this for my father. My father is the biggest Superman fan, and by proxy, I also enjoy Superman. I grew up on all the Superman TV shows, the original movies. I don't want to talk about Man of Steel. As much as I love Henry in The Witcher is as much as I don't love his portrayal of Superman. So, but All-Star Superman is great. I mean, it's kind of sad. The premise is that these are these like 8 stories, it is these 8 collections that are compiled together for this graphic novel that follows the alternate universe where Superman only has 1 year to live. Something happens in a mission in like the first scene where he will die in a year. So it follows what he chooses to do with that year. And it's a lot of fun stories. You got great Jimmy Olsen, you got Lex Luthor, you got Lois. Like, the gang's all there. It's a great time. 4 out of 5. If DC made Superman remotely like this comic book version of him, I think more people would like him. Because, I don't know. It's a conversation for another day. But I know a lot of people don't like Superman, but I just think he gets a bad rep because of what DC's been doing with him lately. The next thing I read, and I started it in November, and I didn't finish it till December because I wasn't feeling it, and it was kind of giving me a little slump, and it's huge, and that is The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. This book is huge. This is a big boy. And so I read the first one, and I thought it was fine, 4 out of 5. I think this one I liked less, 3.5 out of 5. I think my issue with this series so far is that it's still very going on a quest, which is not my favorite fantasy plot arc. I mean, it's part of the reason I'm not like as in love with Lord of the Rings as other people, I think. And this takes a lot from Lord of the Rings, and I know it's going to diverge in a few books from what I've heard. But this one, it's a very cool magic system. There are characters I do love, like when we get to go into the mind of Perrin or some of the Aes Sedai, they are so interesting, but the main character is not to me. I don't love Rand. He's not like, I don't know, he's not unlikable. Like, he doesn't have major flaws per se, but I don't know. I don't like being in his head so much. He's just kind of boring to me, and unfortunately, he's the main character. Yeah. So, I'm going to continue. I want to get to the fourth book because everyone says that's where this all sings. And also, I mean, I'm kind of a completionist, so now that I've started, I know it might take me a few years, but I'm going to try and, slowly go along and read it. I'm not binging this, it's like I don't need to read a book every month. I'll read them every 2 or 3 months. So, but yeah, that's The Great Hunt. So the last book I read and finished on December 31st is The Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. Now, this is the second book in a Darker Shade of Magic series, or Darker Shades of Magic. Might just be called Shades of Magic. Fantasy names are hard to remember for me. There's a lot of adjective noun everywhere. But I liked the first book. I thought it was fun. I liked the magic. I liked these 3 different Londons, or correction, 4 different Londons. And I liked the 2 main characters a lot. My biggest complaint in the first book is that I wanted more. Like, everything felt kind of like first level. And this book, I got a little more. The characters got to be better. Like, not better. They got to be fleshed out a bit more, which I really enjoyed. And the overarching plot was pretty fun. The first book's plot I thought was kind of predictable, and this one I honestly did not know where it was going, and it ended with a huge cliffhanger. It was one of those books where you're at the second to last chapter and you realize, oh, this is not getting wrapped up right now. But 4 out of 5 stars, and I am eagerly awaiting for my library to get me the 3rd book so I can dive into that. But overall, a great reading month for me. I had a great time, and I'm looking forward to this month of reading too. Have a great day. Bye.